Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Ahmad Haboush from Islamic University. Today I'm going to talk about a special writer called of resistance literature, Ghassan Kanafani. I will show you some points about his upbringing and life, political background, Ghassan creativity, his writing, assassination, awards and honors, finally opinions of critics and poets. His upbringing and life, Ghassan Faiz Kanafani was born in 1936 into a middle-class Palestinian family in the city of Acre under the British Mandate for Palestine. He was the third child of Muhammad Faiz Abdul Razak. Ghassan received his early education in a French Catholic missionary school in Java. In May, when the outbreak of hostilities in the 1948 Arab-Israeli war spilled over into Acre, Kanafani and his family were forced into exile during the Palestinian exodus. In a letter to his son, in a letter to his own son, written decades later, he recalled the intense shame he left on observing aged, aged 9 the men of his family surrendering their weapons to become refugees. Kanafani completed his secondary education receiving a United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees teaching certificate in 1952. He was the first employed as an art teacher for some 1,200 displaced Palestinian children in a refugee camp in a refugee camp where he began writing short stories in order to help his students to contextualize their situation. He was a lawyer, was active in the national movement that opposed the British occupation and its encouragement of Jewish immigration, and who had been imprisoned on, on several occasions by the British when Ghazan was still a child. Hassan was infected with diabetes disease in his life. His sister had it before, and at the same early age, which increased his connection to her and to her murdered daughter Lamis Najim. His political background in 1952, he also enrolled in the Department of Arabic Literature at the University of Damascus. The following year, he met Dr. Haboush, who introduced him to politics and was to exercise an important influence in his early work. In 1955, before he could complete his degree with a thesis on race and religion, the Zionist literature, which was to form, to form, which was to form the basis for his 1967 study on Zionist literature. Kanafani was expelled from the university for its political affiliations with the movement of Arab nationalists to which Abbas had recruited him. In 1967, he also joined the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and this thing marked a departure from pan-Arab nationalism towards revolutionary Palestinian struggle. At the time of his assassination, he held extensive contact with foreign journalists and many Scandinavian anti-Zionist Jews. Ghassan's creativity, Ghassan's literature and literary production was always interacting with his life, with his life and the lives of people. And in everything he wrote, he despite a reality that he experienced or was affected by. Returning to Haifa, in which he described in the journey of his citizens of Haifa as they moved to Acre, he was aware of this and was still a child, sitting, watching, and listening. Then these events concentrated in his mind. Later, in the frequency of the novel, The Land of Sad Oranges, or tells the story of his family's journey from Acre and their resistance in Gaza. The death of bed number 12 was inspired by his stay in the hospital due to illness. As we know, he was suffering from diabetes disease. Also, Min Insan uh, from his life and the life of the Palestinian in Kuwait, and the impact of his return to Damascus in an old car through the desert. The suffering and its description were that aberrant picture of the events, but in its aim it symbolized as despite it, the loss of Palestinians in that era turned their cause into a livelihood issue, proving that they had gone astray the road. His writings and books, he writes a lot of novels. For example, uh, Back to Haifa in 1970, and The Blind and the Deaf in 1972. And he also wrote stories for like A Death in the Bed, number 12, in 1961, and also Men Insan in 1963. And he also wrote Blaze, uh, for example, Al Bab in 1964, and The Hat and the Prophet in 1973. And he had a thesis and a research, for example, Literature of Resistance in Occupied Palestine in 1966 to 1948. Assassination. His political writings and journalism are thought to have made a major impact on Arab thought and a strategy at that time. On 8th July 1972, Kanafani, aged 32 at the time, was assassinated in Beirut when he turned on the ignition of his Aston 1100, detonating a Garanda, which in turn detonated a 3 kilo plastic bombs planted behind the bomba bar. Kanafani was inserted together with his 17-year-old niece, Lamis Najim. Mossad eventually claimed responsibility about this event. Awards and honors has awards and honors. In 1966, he won the Friends of the Book Award in Lebanon for his novel "What's Left for You," and also he won the World Journalist Organization Prize in 1974 and the Lotz Prize in 1975. His name was awarded the Jerusalem Medal for Culture and Arts in 1990. In 1990. Opinions of critics and poets. Mahmoud Darwish, perhaps the most important expansion of Kanafani literary research is that of consolidating of the foundation of the birth of the new Palestinian approaching the Palestinian person who is aware of the cases of his Nakba, understand the conditions of the Arab world, and know more about the nature of the Zionist that he is facing. Barry Abu Saab, he lived only 36 years, but if we look at his fiction, short stories, theoretical, critical writings, in addition to his work as a researcher, political and historical journalist, and printer, we think that we are in a front of a group of authors, not an individual writer. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you really enjoyed my presentation. What do you say?